What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Entrepreneur Cast, your source for tactical lessons in entrepreneurship from a cast of entrepreneurs. I'm Jayson and DeMers.
And I'm Sam McRoberts.
And today we're going to talk about 12 content marketing ideas to get your content strategy off the ground.
Awesome. So, number one, right off the bat, we've got to talk about blogging. I can't think of any reason for any site at this point in time to not have a blog. It is one of the simplest ways to create content on a regular basis. You have a nice place for it to live. People are used to checking out a company's blog. There's absolutely zero reason for you to not have a blog for your business. And it's pretty low-hanging fruit. And it's a really great way to build not just brand affinity, but to create pages that are likely to rank for all sorts of things related to your business, where a product or money page may not actually be the best place to send a searcher.
Yeah, I totally agree. If like Sam said, in this day and age, you need to be ranking for text content, and a blog is your hub for all text-based content. And that is the primary way people search, is by getting text-based search results, and you need to be showing up in those search results so that people can find you and find your business. So if you don't have a blog, that should be your number one step in your content marketing strategy. Absolutely. And going along with that, this is number two, but guest blogging. Now, this is where you actually reach out to other websites or publications that are related to your industry or your niche, and you offer them blog posts that you have written that will be published on their websites. And what this does is it sort of extends your blog to other relevant sectors of your industry. This helps you build a personal brand. It helps you build brand authority, and it helps you reach a new audience, hopefully your target audience, where you can build that awareness and bring people back to your site. It's also really beneficial from an SEO perspective, because guest blogging gets you inbound links to your website, and those inbound links are crucial in the ranking algorithm. So guest blogging is not just a good content marketing strategy, it's a good SEO strategy. With that said, SEO and content marketing they go hand in hand. Content is really the fuel, the fuel of the SEO fire, but it is content marketing, and it's a fantastic multi-pronged, multi-benefit, multifaceted approach to content marketing. So absolutely do guest blogging.
For number three, you could do things like make predictions, or, along with your blogging, cover controversial topics or jump on to trending topics or hashtags, right? Leverage the public mind to jump on something that can tie you in. So, like, for example, with the whole coronavirus thing, people immediately started writing so many guides to working from home,
Yes.
homeschooling, best webcams and microphones, right? Like, everybody was all over that. Or controversial topics. Anytime somebody in politics says something idiotic, out come the blog posts and the pundits and everybody talking about it and tearing it apart. Or predictions, right? Stock market going down. When's it going to go up? When's it going to go down further? What's going to happen? All of those, people really dislike uncertainty, and they tend to herd together. And so if things are going on where a lot of people's minds are focused on something, that can absolutely be worth tackling.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I can give just a couple of examples of where this has worked for me. So for about 5 or 6 years, I was a columnist for Forbes. And one of my most popular sort of annual traditions that I did was I would lay out predictions for the following year in the areas of online marketing, SEO, content marketing, and social media marketing. And it would just be called, the top 7 predictions for SEO of, 2019, 2020, whatever. And they would get hundreds of thousands of visits, views, shares, comments. I would get lots of feedback on those. People love predictions, and they love to come back and see if things were right. And so it can be a fun type of content to do that also gets you a lot of links and a lot of activity and a lot of traction.
And you know what? Like, if you're wrong, you can own it. And that alone would set you apart from almost everybody else out there who pretends that they're never wrong.
Yes, it's true. And the other thing that you mentioned, Sam, was leveraging trending topics like the whole coronavirus crisis. Well, I'm guilty. I'm on the bandwagon of putting out content that is related to this. I mentioned this on one of our earlier episodes, but I've got some content on my site on the email analytics blog that deals directly with working from home tips and tricks and productivity hacks and so on. And just a few days ago, I published a new article called "77 Remote Work Statistics That You Need to Know in 2020."
Nice.
And all of this is designed to capture the attention and the need and serve the need of my target audience in a time where everybody's working from home and people need this information. And what I've found is that statistics posts like that 77 remote work statistics post that I did, they get cited and referenced and picked up by other journalists, other authors. And what that means is inbound links and traffic.
Always the links.
Yes, it's always about the links when you want to boost your SEO. So it works to do the trending topics. Just be careful during this crisis, and we've talked about this before. You don't want to come across as salesy. You need to just give people value. It's okay to
Helpful,
leverage the conversation, but help. Yep.
helpful, not ghoulish.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, number 4 would be original research, surveys, or data. So, what I mean by this is, well, in my last example, I talked about how I published statistics, remote work statistics. Now, all of those statistics were not primary data. I didn't conduct those surveys or research. What I did is I aggregated them from other sources that had published primary data. But what's a step better than that is if you can be the one who's publishing that primary data, you can be the one publishing that research report. How did those statistics that I referenced come to be? What happened is some companies surveyed their audiences and gathered data, and then they published research reports. I then cited those research reports, thereby giving them links, like I just talked about.
Yep.
So how can you do this? Well, when I was running my marketing agency, I did this for the last several years by publishing a report called "What Works in Online Marketing." And the way I created that report was I surveyed my audience. I had an email list of tens of thousands of people over the course of who had signed up at one point or another, or reached out, or otherwise become part of the email newsletter. And I sent them a link to a survey that asked them questions about what sorts of online marketing activities they were doing, and asking them how well they thought it was working, as well as asking for their estimates of ROI and things of that nature. I aggregated those responses into a single report and then published the report as the "What Works in Online Marketing" report. That report I could then I could send that out to journalists or authors. I could even blog about it on the places where I guest blog from time to time, and I could link back and cite those resources, which were then further linked and cited by other journalists and authors because it was primary data.
I can actually think of 3 good examples in the SEO industry of folks who do this. So Moz, for one, with their what used to be their annual state of SEO survey, they'd survey a whole bunch of different SEOs to get their opinions on what ranking factors were working and not working and what percentage of the algorithm they made up. I know that John Doherty at Credo, getcredo.com, has a couple of surveys around industry pricing. So, what does the typical freelancer or consultant in the SEO space charge? What's the average size of an ongoing retainer? That sort of data. And then Brian Dean of backlinko.com has done a few different ones, but I'm pretty sure he did one that was about like high performing title tags, looked at a ton of different data from a lot of different websites to see, what sort of length and title tag structure performs really well. But yeah, primary data, like doing the research and coming up with something unique and interesting is fantastic for getting links and attention.
Absolutely. I also have to give a shout out to Neil Patel, because he publishes a ton of primary research data, facts, and really interesting statistics on his blog, which is at neilpatel.com. He is a prominent and well-known and respected online marketer, and he is. I was listening to one of his recent podcast episodes, actually, where he said that anytime he publishes a blog post that has primary research data, statistics, or facts in it, he can expect between 50 to 100 links to that page alone as people
That's awesome.
cite it. Now, granted, his website gets probably millions of views a month, and he's well known, and so people are readily linking to him. And as a startup, or as a new entrepreneur, it can be hard to have that kind of reach. However, there's nothing wrong with publishing primary research and getting however many links you get, and it'll grow over time.
And one of the cool things about that is that you can transform it into a lot of different things, which brings us to number 5, infographics,
Yes,
right? So you can take data and it could be a blog post, it could be a podcast, you could turn it into a video or an animation, or you can make it an infographic. You can create a really nice visual way of consuming that data that people can embed and share, something that's perfectly broken down into chunks that can easily be shared on Instagram or Facebook. Yeah, infographics, they used to be bigger. I feel like maybe they're making a resurgence. I'm starting to see more of them again, but really, really nice way to consume data. Most people are visual in some fashion.
I really do like them, and I agree. I think they are seeing a resurgence. I've been playing around with them a lot with various posts that I've done at email analytics, and I am noticing that they're getting some traction. So I put one up on the Reddit. Reddit.com/r/infographics, which is a place where you can go post infographics. And within 24 hours, my post had already gotten 200 upvotes. So you can imagine
Nice.
how many eyeballs got on a post that got that many upvotes, right? And I noticed a lot of traffic to my site. And aside from that, I found other. I talked to editors for places where I guest post, and they said it was totally cool if I embed infographics within my posts when it's relevant. So
Nice.
there's a lot of ways that you can use it. And then another way that I used it was I posted several infographics on LinkedIn, just out to my community, my network. And I noticed that when I include an infographic with my posts, it gets way more reach, way more comments and likes. And that in turn actually pushes it forward in LinkedIn's algorithm to show it to more people in their newsfeed, thereby getting even more eyeballs on my content, on my brand,
That's
building
cool.
that awareness. So I'm a strong advocate of infographics. And as a matter of fact, just this morning, I reached out to my infographic guy and gave him a new data set and said, turn this into an infographic. So I'm totally on board with infographics.
Cool.
Yep. So number 6, I would say would be YouTube. Doing video. Video is probably the content medium in this episode that has the highest barrier to entry. I am guilty of still not really. I've only dipped my
Same.
toes in. Yeah, I've only dipped my toes in on YouTube, and the reason for that is because there is a high barrier to entry. You don't want low production value. You have there's a lot of competition now on YouTube, and you don't want to look crappy compared to
I just hate
what your competitors are doing.
I hate seeing myself on camera. I don't mind voice, I've been told I have like a nice radio voice, but I just don't like seeing myself on camera. So that's why I haven't done YouTube yet.
Yeah, I don't really have a good excuse for not doing YouTube. I know I need to do it, and here I am. Here we are giving advice on doing it. Here's the thing: we know that we should be doing it, and you probably know you should be doing it. There's a high barrier to entry, but that actually is one of the biggest strengths I think of YouTube. Because of that barrier to entry, a lot of people aren't doing it, which means there's less competition. Your competitors might not be there, which means there might be an opportunity there for you to capture that target audience. So if you can overcome those production barriers to entry, go for it and do it. Just maybe Sam and I can encourage each other to get going on that too.
I'll take it into consideration.
That's pretty much where the conversation on YouTube usually ends. But we would be remiss not to include it as a legitimate suggestion here, because it really should be.
Speaking of things that there's resistance to doing, number 7, starting a podcast. So
Hey, you can't keep holding that over me now. Here
I'm
we
gonna give
are.
you shit for that for a long time, buddy. Uh, so I love podcasts. I don't know when I started listening to them. I'd probably guess maybe 5 or 6 years ago. Um, but for me, like I love going for long walks and flipping on a podcast and
Long walks
listening
on the
as I
beach,
walk.
Sam. Long walks on the beach.
Beach if it's available, park, nature, I don't care. I love walking outdoors.
You like
I
romantic settings while you listen to your
sipping
podcast.
pina coladas. Yep, got it. but yeah, and so podcasts, going for a walk, listening to a podcast, or like just listening to a podcast as you're working on something, it's a really good way to download and assimilate information, to hear interesting points of view, to learn about new things you wouldn't have otherwise heard about. And, it's a really good opportunity to position yourself as an expert, to get reach and access to people you could never have gotten in front of otherwise. It's a potential alternative source of revenue if you're able to build up an audience. I actually think podcasts are still just barely getting started. All of the low hanging fruit is getting pretty saturated, whether it's a business podcast, we're latecomers to that for sure.
Yep.
Or your typical, like interview the celebrity type podcast. But I think there's a ton of room for niche podcasts in unusual areas. Like, I'd love to see a podcast with a couple of blacksmiths talking about where they find anvils and how you forge a sword. Like, I,
That'd be
I, I
cool.
think there's I think there's a lot of room in, and maybe even in areas that people think of as boring. Like, what about a podcast with a plumber who he just talks about the crazy shit he encountered that week,
That could
right?
actually
Like,
be really interesting. What about like a taxi driver and all the stories that
sure,
they probably have? Or even
sure,
like a hotel room maid, like and what have they seen or found in there?
yes,
You know what I mean? There could be some really
yes.
interesting stuff.
Confessions of a private plane hostess. Like,
Yes.
dude, there's tons, and they could be fascinating. And I think that regardless of what space you're in, if you can come up with an interesting angle, even if you think your space is boring, I bet you there's an interesting way to spin that into a podcast.
Yeah, and we Sam and I we're doing a business podcast, and there's we know that there's a lot of these, but this is what we know, this is what we do, and so we're talking about what we know, and that's really what you should be doing too. Be find out where your expertise is, and try to come up with something that you can where you can add value, where you can either teach, give lessons, give insights, give anecdotes, stories from your own experiences, or entertain. My wife has been running a podcast. She's one of the co-hosts of What's Good Games, which is a video game podcast. She's been doing that for a little over 3 years now. And I've seen it just blossom over the course of those 3 years. And that has really opened my eyes to the power of podcasting for building a community, because their community is tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, over the course of those 3 years. It's so fulfilling for her because she communicates with all of her listeners and audience on a day-to-day basis. And it really gives her that sense of happiness, fulfillment, satisfaction. Not to mention, you can monetize your podcast. And there's really a lot of reasons to do it. Sam and I are doing it because we want to. This is really an arm of our content strategies. This is what we're preaching, right? We're, number 7 is a podcast, and here we are doing a podcast. We want to provide value for our audience, for our target audience, and we want to do that in as many ways as possible. And Sam finally convinced me to do a podcast, so here we are. So I can't say that I regret it. This is fun.
I figure if it's a medium that I respect enough to listen to, then it's probably also one I should participate in.
I agree, and I have been listening to more and more podcasts lately as I take walks too. I don't have long romantic walks on the beach like you do, or walks through the park, but I do walk around my neighborhood with my dog when I'm out walking my dog, and yeah, for me that's when I listen to podcasts. So I'm here, and I'm in, and I can attest to the fact that there is a fairly low barrier to entry, I would say, to podcasting. You don't have to worry about video. You only have to worry about audio, and that is a big that's helpful for getting started. Highly recommended. Number 8, I would say, would be an email newsletter. So we talked about in number 4 how you need to conduct original research, surveys, or data. Well, this kind of goes hand in hand, because in order to conduct that research, you probably are going to need an email list that you can send out an email blast to and ask them to fill out your survey. Um, so, how do you build an email newsletter? That's probably a topic for an entirely other episode, because there's a lot that goes into that. But in a nutshell, you're going to use your email newsletter to not only announce new content that you create, be it on your blog or your guest blog or whatever research report you published or whatever infographic or video or podcast you published, but you're going to also use it to communicate and build value with your audience. So connect with them, ask them questions, Find out who they are, and you'll learn about your target audience this way. Your email newsletter and really your email list is one of the most valuable assets that you can have as a business, because these are people who have opted in to hearing from you, and you can leverage that in so many ways. So build that email list and leverage that email newsletter in your content strategy.
Number 9, I would say social media, of course. Depending on where your audience spends their time, that could be posts or videos on Instagram, maybe it's TikTok, maybe it's Facebook, who knows, right? There's tons of different social platforms, more coming online all the time. But depending on where people are spending the most time for your specific demographic, that's a place you should probably consider creating content and or advertising if they're there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you can use social media to amplify your existing content strategy as well.
Totally.
So it's not only a place to create content, but also a place to amplify other content. So it really is a integral part.
To recycle and re-promote, you can create a set of blog posts and then schedule those to get re-upped on social media periodically in random intervals, like shift and sift them. um, Tons of ways that you can use social to help promote and support all of these other content channels. That really, in a lot of ways, is your distribution channel. I mean, pretty much everybody is on social in some fashion, and it's where people tend to go now to find news and make connections and see what's going on and explore and discover new things. So think of that as perhaps one of your hubs for distributing everything you create.
Yep. Number 10 would be Quora and Reddit. So we've touched on Quora in a previous episode, but Quora is a place where people can ask and answer questions at its simplest. And what this means for you is that you can find questions that are relevant to your niche, your expertise, and you can answer them. Now, what's cool about this is that you can answer them within your answer, you can include a link to any content that you've created previously that might help answer that question. So if it's on your blog, or if it was a guest blog, or if it's a research report or anything like that, you can link out to that as part of your answer and say, hey, for a more in-depth or complete answer, or for more information, check out, this podcast episode I did, or this infographic I made over here. Now, when you do that, that has a few benefits. For one, that link that you leave can drive referral traffic for anybody else who comes along ever and sees this question and reads your answer. And B, uh, the Quora ranks really high in search results. And so when people type those questions into Google, they will often see those results in Quora. And so they'll find it there. And those links also drive SEO value. So if you want backlinks, Quora is one way to get them. Now, Reddit is the other side of this. Reddit is, as you probably know, it's like probably the world's biggest forum, and there's many forums within Reddit for any topic and any kind of subtopic that you can think of. What you can do is you can find subreddits or topic related mini forums within Reddit, and you can go communicate with the community there, participate in the community, and from time to time you can go ahead and drop a link, or you can make a reference to some content that you've created, as long as it's relevant. And as long as you don't do so in a pushy or promotional way, it's going to get a lot of eyeballs. But that is the key to Reddit, though, right, Sam?
You've got to be really careful if you're not
Yep.
a regular redditor. If you just show up there to drop a link to your stuff, like, you will get torn to pieces.
Oh
So
yeah.
make sure that if you're gonna be promoting something of yours in a subreddit, be a part of that Reddit. Like, be a part of the community, contribute, upvote, like, comment, like, take part, and make sure that you do a hell of a lot more taking part than you do plugging your stuff.
Yeah, it's probably like a 10-to-1 ratio of sort of things where
At least.
you need to upvote and comment on other people's stuff. 9 times for every one time, or 10 times for every one time you post something of your own. One thing I do, I'm addicted to a game called Command and Conquer Rivals, which is a mobile game. It's a strategy game that I play way too much. And so there's a subreddit for this game, and I participate in that subreddit. And I'm one of the top players in the game. And so when I give advice, or when I post things in the subreddit, it gets noticed, and it gets you know appreciated, because my insights are valuable there, because of my status in the game. And so I participate and I add value to that subreddit. And then from time to time, I find other subreddits where I can participate, and I will sometimes add a link to some content I've created or a blog post I've created, but only if it adds value. And if people look through my history and see, well, is this guy just promoting his stuff, or is this guy legit? They're going to see I'm legit, because they're going to see that I'm really participating in other subreddits, that I'm actually adding value, that I'm actually being part of the community, that there is, it's not okay. This is written in the Reddit rules, and I'm going to botch this a little bit, but the nutshell goes like this: it's not okay to be a website with a Reddit account. It is okay to be a Redditor with a website.
That
That
makes
is,
sense.
it's actually written into the Reddit rules. So keep that in mind when you're on Reddit.
Number 11, ebooks, right? So taking something that you know really well, something about your expertise, your business, your industry, a subject you find really interesting, and writing out a detailed walkthrough of that thing and turning it into an ebook, or even writing like an actual book that you distribute as an ebook. Ebooks can be a really good way to promote your industry. It could be linking out to affiliate stuff within your ebook. It could be a way to build your email list and capture email addresses. An ebook could be a way to build your own personal brand. So I published a book, I don't know, geez, 5 years ago now. And that was, I was able to leverage having published a book. I was able to get it to be a bestseller on Amazon. I was able to use that to get author accounts on Inc. and Entrepreneur. And I was able to use those to build up some cachet and get a higher caliber of clients. There's a lot of ways you could use a book or an ebook to not just promote your business, but leverage, build up your brand and your own personal brand and business brand.
Yeah, I really like ebooks. I used ebooks to build my email list when I was at the marketing agency, and I got by the time I sold the agency, we had over 60,000 people on our email list, and almost all of them came from people who had opted into receiving ebooks that I was promoting around
Nice.
in my guest posts, in my blog posts, in pop-ups on the website. People love ebooks. They're a great way to build an email list, and so much more. Like you said, you can really build a personal brand and authority with an ebook. So that's a good one.
They can also be a good way to make money in their own right. I know multiple people who are making six figures plus a year just selling ebooks on Gumroad. So
Wow.
there's definitely a lot you can do with ebooks.
Wow. Well, that brings us to number 12, which would be build a tool. So this is a sort of a newer type of way to think about content that has really been pushed by Neil Patel because of his success with purchasing Ubersuggest. Ubersuggest was, before he bought it, it was a well-known keyword research tool that was often used by SEO professionals to conduct keyword research. Neil bought the tool, and he's been very open on his show about numbers and so on. But he bought it for something in the realm of, I think, $150,000, and it is now the single biggest source of traffic to his website, because all the traffic that people, all people come to, they come to the tool and they use it, and now Neil is able to put his own messaging on that tool to, essentially either sell them on a subscription for the tool itself,
Smart.
or upsell people into getting on board with his marketing agency. So for $150,000, Neil completely turned the tide of his website traffic. It was a brilliant move, and he now preaches, hey everybody, build a tool or buy a tool, whatever you got to do. Put tools on your website. He says they're his new favorite kind of content. So you can't
Dude, I
argue
mean,
with that success.
the links that you can get out of building a tool are crazy.
Yeah.
You see this a lot in the finance industry with like calculators, mortgage calculators, retirement
Yep.
calculators, compound interest calculators. But in the SEO space, like this is now a thing just within our industry. A lot of people are starting to build tools. There's one called batchspeed.com. I just saw one the other day called, it was WWJD, right? What would JavaScript do? And basically, since Google took down the fetch and render from the old Google Search Console, they built their own version that basically does the equivalent of Google fetch and render and shows you what a page would look like with and without JavaScript enabled. And it's to see if JavaScript is changing anything on your page in a way that could hurt your SEO. But like I'm seeing more and more of these tools being spun up by SEO agencies and individual contributors. It seems to be a pretty smart play.
Yeah, it does seem to be. I'm testing this out right now. I just put up a tool on the email analytics website. It's emailanalytics.com/time dash calculator. And it's all it is it's a simple time calculator that calculates the duration of time between a given date and time and A and a given date and time B. And the twist that I put on it was that you can actually set work hours within this tool so that the tool will calculate only work hours that you designate for given from Sunday, for any weekday. And the tool will then spit out the number of actual work hours that were elapsed within the time you gave it. Because I couldn't find a tool that already does this. And the reason why I got this idea was because I was using Ubersuggest to do keyword research. And so there's an example of me being on Neil's website because he bought a tool. And what I found was that there are like hundreds of thousands of searches per month for the keyword time calculator or time duration calculator or duration between two times. Like for some reason, people are looking for a tool that does this. And there was only a handful of tools that are doing this that I could find. And the ones that are doing it kind of suck. They look crappy. They don't seem like they've gotten any real SEO love. And I said, you know what? I could do this, but better. And because I am an SEO expert, I can probably get this ranking pretty high. And if I can capture any slice of that pie of hundreds of thousands of search traffic, of visitors, well, let's just say that maybe in another episode I can come back and talk about how that test performed, because I just put it up, and so test is in progress, but I'm drinking the Kool-Aid and practicing what I preach. So we'll see how it goes.
So there we have it. Thank you again for listening to another episode of the Entrepreneur Cast.
Yeah, thanks, you guys. Really appreciate it. Be sure to like, subscribe, and tell your friends if you like it. And we'll see. We'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Later.